Several weeks ago, I preached a sermon about love, and I wondered out loud with you what it would mean for us to believe that the only thing more powerful than hate is love, and to live as if that were true. I told you that choosing love is a hard practice because I believe it means refusing to dehumanize anyone, even those whose behavior is doing that to others. I said choosing to believe in love also means choosing to believe that people are more than the worst thing we have ever done, and that transformation is possible, that there's always a way back. I said that to believe in love is to also believe that tenderness has power, and that when people are tended to, when people are seen as whole, no matter how broken they feel or behave, that is where healing can begin. It wouldn't be quite accurate to say that some of you vehemently disagreed with me. It was more that you had some difficult questions. You had questions about the limits of love. You went right to the edges, where the questions of how to love or even whether to love are the most complicated. The most common question I got after that sermon was, well, what about this horrible person who has done terrible things? Fill in the blank with the name of your choice. Are you saying I'm supposed to love this person? I don't. I don't want to. And I don't believe they are more than the worst thing they have ever done. I responded that, first of all, it is certainly not up to me to tell you who you are supposed to love. The person you named may not be yours to love. We can't love everyone because we are human, and we all have limits. But we also don't get to decide who is beyond redemption. We don't get to choose who is beyond the reaches of that larger love, which I believe holds us all. I also said I would do a follow-up sermon, a part B, on the hard stuff of love. And I suggested that if we really do want to work on the practice of love, if we really do want to work on the practice of not dehumanizing others and believing that transformation is possible, maybe we shouldn't start with the hardest possible person. Don't start with the Nazis. Start with your difficult cousin, whose political posts you had to block on Facebook because they upset you so much. But in the intervening weeks, I realized that what I actually want to talk to you about is a subject we don't talk about very often in our faith, which is evil, which is the hard reality that people do evil things. And if I was going to talk about evil, I might as well start with the Nazis. I spent my 19th birthday at Auschwitz, the death camp 33 miles east of Krakow, Poland. It was not the most festive thing I could have chosen. Auschwitz was the largest Nazi concentration and extermination camp, as it was known. And it's more accurate to say it was really a complex of camps. It included the nearby Birkenau camp, as well as several forced labor camps and a huge chemical factory. There are many things I have never forgotten about that place, most things, actually. But one of the most unforgettable was arriving on the train from Krakow. It is about an hour's ride. I think I have been trying to understand this my entire adult life. The Polish people were living under Nazi occupation, of course, and they were no doubt terrified. And yet, there were people who saw. There were people who refused to pretend it wasn't happening. Poland had one of the largest resistance movements in Europe. As many as 400,000 people were part of that underground network of resistance at some point, all at great risk to themselves and their families. What makes the difference? Why do some people comply with evil and come to accept it and others don't? Why do some people perpetuate evil? Why do people do such terrible things? How do people lose sight of one another's humanity? How can people dehumanize each other to such a degree that the Holocaust even becomes possible? As Unitarian Universalists, we don't talk a lot about it. Both our Unitarian and our Universalist strands rejected the doctrine of original sin, that we were born sinful, which was so prevalent in early American Protestant Christianity. The Unitarians rejected it because they believed in the fundamental goodness of humans. The Universalists rejected it because they believed in God's unconditional love. So our spiritual forebears chose to reject a theology of original evil, inherent evil, and they chose goodness instead. The goodness of God for the Universalists and the goodness of people for the Unitarians. And unlike a lot of other religious traditions, our focus has remained on that goodness, on the capacity of people to change, to do better when we know better. And that is a beautiful thing. And as we know, people also have the capacity to do great harm. And there are times when the depth of that harm, the lack of compassion or empathy or respect is so pervasive that no other word but evil comes close. In the face of evil, what are our moral and ethical responsibilities? What are our obligations, especially as a people of faith who claim the inherent worth and dignity of all as one of our core principles, as a people of faith who believe that love is the grounding value? These are deeply theological questions, but they are not theoretical questions, not at all. Not at this moment in our country. In January, at the height of ICE brutality in Minnesota, my good friend and colleague, Ellen Spiro, sent me a piece she had found about how evil happens, and it was helpful for me, and maybe it will be for you too. What she sent was actually the transcript of a podcast by a theologian, minister, and radio broadcaster named Tripp Fuller. And in it, he talks about something he calls sequential complicity. And sequential complicity is the process of making small moral compromises over time. Compromises that become larger and reshape what we are willing to accept. He says that evil usually begins with very small decisions, tiny choices, each one defensible. each one framed as necessary, each one in service of something the people who make it believe is good. And over time, a movement or a leader just keeps asking people to make moral trade-offs, to overlook this comment, to excuse that behavior, to dismiss this concern. And each step seems manageable and feels justified at the time. And slowly, the unacceptable, the evil, becomes acceptable, then becomes normal. Exactly what Tripp Fuller described happened under the Nazis. And this part may feel frighteningly familiar. Fuller says that once people surrender their moral reasoning to a tribe or a leader, any facts that challenge the prevailing narrative are seen as attacks. They're literally felt as attacks. Criticism from outsiders or objectors just confirm the sense of persecution and tighten the group's loyalty. And any questioning from members is defined as betrayal, and the cost of betrayal is very high. Sequential complicity is appealing because it offers simple answers to complicated realities. It divides the world into good and evil, friend and enemy, us and them. And this black and white thinking is exactly what makes dehumanization possible, and then easier and easier. But sequential complicity is not just about those people other than us. We're all susceptible to it to some degree, especially so in times of fear, uncertainty, and rapid change. And sequential complicity is subtle. It walks people almost imperceptibly toward evil because it appeals to things we all care about. Things like belonging, meaning, purpose, a sense of identity, and clarity about what is right and what is wrong. And if we are honest, most of us know that it is tempting to turn people into enemies. They are the problem. They are less than. They make terrible decisions. They are stupid. They are everything that is wrong with this society. We feel justified in our contempt and righteous in our bitterness. But contempt and bitterness and sweeping generalizations about groups of people are always dangerous. They are the gateways to a dangerous path. And as I have said many times before, we cannot dismantle what is evil with the very same tools used to build it. The Unitarian Universalist theology on evil is that evil is not a force that exists outside of us. It is something very human, a potential within us all. Very little was written about evil from a Unitarian Universalist perspective until 2018, when the UUA published a pamphlet to its collection of theological statements called Unitarian Universalist Views on Evil. I think this was a sign that it had become a growing concern among us in the last decade. And I think our faith's attention to climate justice and racial justice and anti-oppression work has made us consider the truth of evil much more seriously. Reverend Dr. Rosemary Bray McNatt writes in that essay on evil, however we describe the means by which we experience evil, its source remains the same. Our capacity to turn in on ourselves so completely that we lose sight of our connections to others and to that greater source that binds us together. She writes, whenever we forget who we are, whenever we forget whose we are, and what our relationship to one another is, there lies the breeding ground for evil. It is that loss of essential memory which leads to the individual actions and collective structures that reflect and reinforce that terrible disconnect. Evil has its origins in the abandonment of hope and meaning among those who have lost or never known their core identity as children of the holy and kin to all people on earth. Evil has its origins in the abandonment of hope and meaning among those who have lost or never known their core identity as children of the holy and kin to all people on earth. And so, to resist evil in the larger world, but also within ourselves, we must return to the practice of love, to the understanding that we are all connected and that we belong to one another. And the good news here is that if evil grows through sequential complicity, through small, repeated choices, then goodness grows the same way. If evil begins in forgetting that we belong to one another, then our work is to remember it, step by step, choice by choice. The work is inward. It is the daily refusal to let harm have the final word inside us. It is choosing to notice what still gleams at the edge of the day. It is stitching a life together with small, ordinary mercies. This is how the human stronghold holds, by remaining whole.